Hello. This is Jonathan, and you're listening to the Joney Talks podcast, the place where we help you achieve your financial goals. Hola, amigos. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And if you're a new listener to the show, special warm welcome to you. I really appreciate you tuning into the show. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. I appreciate it even more. In today's episode, we will speak to my good friend Lee Huffman from the We Travel There podcast. We met through the FinCon community, and I had the chance to be on his show as well to talk about Oslo. This was actually my first podcast ever, and the spark to this podcast actually. Next to his podcast, Lee is a freelance writer about all topics personal finance, and of course traveling. He writes about credit cards, points and miles, travel hacks, and so on and so on. What I, however, did not know when I met Lee is that he recently left a very well-paid job and moved cities within the US to live a more balanced lifestyle, pursue his passions, and to spend more time with his kids. And this is what we will talk about today. How and why Lee made these drastic changes to his lifestyle, and how you can achieve that as well, even with a regular income. This episode is for you if you're looking at making intentional changes to your lifestyle, improve your work-life balance, and still progress on your financial goals. So without further ado, let's hear the interview. Hello, Lee. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's great. A little cloudy outside. It's getting to be wintertime, but overall, it's great.
Fantastic. Where are you located, Lee?
I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's a really popular city. It's been growing significantly. Probably about 100 people a day are moving here because there's so much going on in this world. We moved here about 2 years ago, and we couldn't be happier with our choice.
Okay, excellent. And Lee, I know you mostly through or primarily through your podcast, We Travel There, where we can touch upon it at the end of the show. But brought you here, and I'm excited to have you on. Why? Because you have quite a story. You talk about Nashville, and actually not later than 2 years ago, you were still in LA. So you moved 2 years ago to Nashville, and you were in a full-time job in corporate finance, I believe, and you made the move to Nashville. And this is what I want to talk to you about today.
That sounds great. I look forward to talking about it.
Okay, fantastic. So, Lee, maybe you can introduce a bit the story behind that move. So you've been working 18 years as a corporate finance professional, for 18 years in the same company. And 2 years ago, you decided to, or maybe a bit before the move, you decided to move to Nashville. So what happened, actually? So you were happy, you were not happy, and I think you were making quite some good money. So people would think, well, why not stay there?
No, absolutely. So I'll just go back a little bit. Yeah, I worked in banking for almost 20 years. So about 18 years or so, worked in banking for a few different banks. So started with a regional bank, and then we got bought by Citibank, and then moved to Bank of America. And then from there, those were all on the sales side of the banking. So working with customers, creating loans, doing investments, opening up bank accounts, all the different basics that you'd have at your bank.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to get away from the sales side of things, and I wanted to be more on the strategic side of the bank and helping really kind of form where the bank is going on a strategic level. And so I found this opportunity at City National Bank, where I was a FP&A, so financial planning and analysis manager. And essentially I was supporting the back office side. So basically I would do budgeting, forecasting, strategic planning. I would do business cases if we were looking to expand or bring a new product in, or looking at even closing branches or different offices. And over the course of 13 years, I supported almost every different division of the bank. And so it really gave me a good flavor of all the different aspects of banking, both from an operational standpoint as well as sales. And overall, I mean, I had a good experience there. I'm not sure exactly what happened, honestly, but just at a certain point, probably about 6 months before we moved, there was it was just made clear to me that my time was going to be short. And instead of sticking out and hanging out for a long period of time and just waiting for the axe to fall, I started thinking, okay, what do I want to do? Obviously, I have a next move to plan, and I can either go find another corporate finance job and you know, start working, really long hours for the new company, potentially have a long commute again. Where I was living before was in Orange County, where like basically where Disneyland is.
Mhm.
And I was working in downtown LA, which is about 35 miles. So it's not too far distance wise, but because of traffic and because of trains and everything else, it was basically an hour and a half each way. So 3 hours a day I was commuting from Anaheim to downtown Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And that was, like when you are single or maybe you're married, but no kids yet, those type of hours, as far as long hours at work and those type of hours of commuting, aren't that big of a deal, right? You just, okay, this is what I got to do.
Mhm.
And, but once you start having kids and you start realizing how much you're missing, that really starts to wear on you. And so, probably 5, 6 years ago, I was listening to a podcast from one of the people from FinCon, where you and I know each other from, and they were talking about creating a plan to be able to basically be able to be either retired or financially independent in 10 years or less. And of course, like you mentioned, I had a little bit of an advantage because I was making really good money at the bank. I
Mhm.
was making between salary and bonus approximately $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's really good money, especially when the average salary in the United States is probably between $50,000 to $60,000.
And you enjoyed your job, huh? I
Yeah, it was
understand.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to work with the top levels of management in the company.
Oh, perfect.
Really basically being the right hand person as far as all the numbers are concerned.
Mhm.
And so it was really great for a number of years. And then I don't know what happened, but I went from being a hero to a zero. I mean, I was the guy that my boss would send me to whatever problem was happening, with whatever division. He would say, "Hey, Lee, go work with this executive, figure out what's going on, and get it fixed."
Mhm.
That's what I would do. And then I don't know what happened. Things changed, and I was no longer that guy. I don't know if it was something with him, something with me, or a combination of thereof. Probably the combination. I mean, after my dad passed away in 2012, I definitely had a different mindset.
Mhm.
Basically, trying to figure out what was most important to me, and so I'm sure and then also with my son being born in 2011, and then my daughter in 2015. Between all those things happening, it really kind of reevaluates your priorities, and you have to figure out what's most important to you at that point.
Sure.
And I used to want to be in the top levels of management within a bank or another company, but I started realizing that it wasn't worth all that extra effort to be away from your family and everything else. And so I don't know if it was like a kind of a subconscious thing where I would still get my job done. I would still put in all the work that I needed to do to get my job done, but maybe I didn't put in all the extra effort,
Mhm.
that some of the other people were. I don't feel that I made any different change in that, but I mean, definitely there were times where I would say, you know what, I can work a little bit more and maybe get something, a fraction of an ounce different, right? Or I can spend those 3 hours hanging out with my family, right?
Mhm.
Because of the long hours and because of the commute, my wife was working full time as well. We would drop our kids off at 6:30 in the morning and then pick them up at 6:30 at night, and then get home, around 7, eat,
It's a long
spend a little
day,
bit
huh?
of time with them, and then put them in bed by
Yeah.
9.
Yeah.
And so you barely see your family, and it's like the money is great. California is an awesome place to live as far as like sunshine and weather and everything else. But if you're doing all that and not being able to enjoy it, like why are you doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
And so again, when it was made clear to me that it was time to leave, we basically went through that process, thinking with my wife and saying, okay, well, what should we do with my career and your career? Should I go find another corporate finance job that hopefully would be in Orange County? So hopefully it'd be closer, right? But Orange County is also a growing area and a lot of business, and the requisite traffic that goes along with that.
Yeah.
So even if I found something closer, it'd still be half hour to an hour drive most cases each way. And so, and then plus obviously if you're in the top levels of the management, you're spending a lot of hours. You're not working 40 hours a week if you're getting paid that well and you're at the top level of the organization. That's just not how it works. And so you know what, we've always talked about living someplace else, and then maybe we should do that. And as we were thinking about everything, that's when really I had a bad issue with health and went out on stress leave just because like I felt like in some ways I was having like a heart attack. Just the pains in my chest and everything. Went through all the different EKGs and doctor's appointments and stress tests and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Said I was in perfect health. Not well, maybe not perfect. I could obviously lose 5 or 10 pounds, right? Like a lot of us. But they said there was nothing wrong with my heart.
Yeah.
There was no problems there, and really they said that it must be something like the mental, just dealing with the stress of it all. And so I started going to see a therapist and everything else, and that's kind of what we realized that's what it was. And went out on stress leave for I don't know, probably 7 weeks, something like that. And during that time is really where we made a decision. Okay, do I really want to go back there and go back into that stressful situation? Because obviously nothing has changed, and possibly it could be even worse, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because hey, you've been gone for all this time, and we're sitting here picking up the slack for you being gone. And so I don't know. We just basically said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be welcome back. I'm going to go back and see, but let's figure out a plan B in case that doesn't work. And so we basically talked about where we'd want to live if I didn't have this job and wasn't kind of tied down to that golden parachute of 200,000 a year. Where should we go?
Mm-hmm.
Because the main thing is, even though I was making that good of money, California is an expensive place to live. I mean, our house was really expensive. The average home there is probably 700,000 for a single family home, and then California is known for high state income taxes and all sorts of other bills that are pretty high. And we were paying for the two kids, we were paying $3,000 a month for daycare and private school.
Wow.
And so
that's
even
that's
though
huge.
yeah, it's a significant number, right? And so even though I was making my paycheck, it was probably, let's say, about like 13, 14,000 a month before taxes. And then by the time you get taxes and everything else like that taken out, and then you pay your mortgage, and then you pay your like daycare expenses and some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, there's a lot less money left over, right? And so it's good money, but it goes pretty quickly. And so yeah, so we started figuring out, okay, well, because I'm a numbers guy, I said, okay, well, if we weren't living here, what would our cost be? Let's take a look at like average homes in some different cities that we would be interested in living in. And so okay, we ran the numbers, and essentially, if my wife essentially kept her job and made the same amount, and then I just either did some freelance work, drove Uber, whatever. Just I would only need to make like 1,000 or 2,000 a month, and we'd totally be fine as far as covering all of our bills. We wouldn't be accelerating our payoff like we
to go back to the bank world. I mean, that was done, and you wanted to absolutely go to a freelance job or something a bit even low, just enough, or to pay the bills, or what were you looking for actually?
Well, part of the conversation with us moving was, okay, if we go someplace that's lower cost, we can get close to paying off all the bills with her paycheck. And I would only need to make a little bit, because we were marveling about how quickly our kids have grown, and basically growing right underneath our eyes. And, again, they were, at the time we moved, they were 3 and 7. It's like, wow, we've missed so much from all the work we were doing and all the hours commuting and everything else like that. Is it really worth it? And so already I was kind of on a plan of trying to get everything paid off within 10 years. That was the goal. And so I was already paying off some bills. I paid off my car. I paid off my student loans, making progress on my wife's student loans and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we move to someplace that's lower cost, instead of waiting the 10 years, what if we, if I didn't work a corporate job and my wife could then focus on her career and moving her career forward, and I basically took front and center with the children as far as taking them to school and taking them to sports and doctor's appointments and those types of things. That way I can maintain a flexible work schedule and basically work when they are in class or at night on my projects. And then my wife can have the normal 9 to 5 type of job. And we would be, we'd be doing okay. Yeah. Like you said, like we wouldn't be making the really good money we were making before, but I think we'd have a much better quality of life. And I think after, having kids, like that really changes your mindset. And then my mindset changed even more so when my father passed away, that, like we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and it's great to be able to save. And obviously you got to save for the future, but you also got to balance things where you can't just be blindly, focus on a goal 30 or 40 years from now and ignore what's happening to you today.
Yeah, especially if you have the kids growing up, it's fantastic
Yeah, absolutely.
to see them grow and spend time. Huh? Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I think because I was home and because I was here with the children, it made the transition easier from moving from California to Nashville. We didn't have any problems. Sometimes when families move, then there becomes behavioral problems and those type of things. We didn't have any of that, and the kids were doing well in school. My son was handling his school, and then my daughter was going to actually staying with me, but I was doing some work with her, and she's now in kindergarten, and so they both have flourished well as far as academically and everything else. And I think if we moved and we basically just dropped them off at daycare, and then I went to go back to another corporate job, the transition would have been much harder.
Yeah,
sure. And especially now that we're in coronavirus, I'm still doing my freelance work and working on my own website and those type of things. But because I don't have the same pressures of large bills and larger lifestyle and those types of things, then I can basically sit with them from 7:30 to 2:30 every day and make sure that they are doing well in their school. And even if I'm just sitting there playing on my phone, just I think part of it is just the fact that I'm sitting there with them gives them some confidence that if they have a question or if they need something, I'm right there for them. And unfortunately, a lot of families right now don't have that luxury. They've maybe it's a single parent and working one or two jobs to try to get all the bills paid, or maybe it's a 2-income household and they're both working and trying to juggle it as well. I mean, even for us, it's still a challenge. I like money, and I'm still trying to build my business, and it was doing really well as we headed into the coronavirus. But because I write a lot about credit cards and travel, some of those clients backed off or stopped completely. But I've been picking up other types of clients that are more banking and investments, and so I still have work that needs to get done, so that way I can earn some money, so that way we can pay off our home quicker, save more for the kids for college, and those types of things, the goals that we have as a family. But so I'm essentially working as a teacher, unpaid, during the day.
Yeah.
And then when it's done, then I work for a little bit for an hour or two. And then it's take the kids to sports. Then I bring my iPad and I work when I'm there, watching them practice, but then also trying to type out an outline or type out, some portions of an article, and then drive home, do a little bit more work while my wife is cooking dinner, and then eat dinner, and then work a little bit more until basically 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then start all over again. And so it's a challenge, and even like again, even with me, I could probably dial it back if I really wanted to, and that's the power of having that financial freedom by paying off so many of our bills and not succumbing to like a bigger lifestyle. Because when we moved here from California to Nashville, our home was literally half the price of what we sold in California.
Yeah.
And it's 30% bigger. And so we have a really nice house here, and we could have moved something smaller where we'd have an even smaller mortgage payment. But, I mean, when it's so cheap, it's easy to go, you know what, let's do something a little bit nicer.
Yeah. Nice.
And so you want to spoil yourself a little bit, you don't want to live the life of a monk. But overall, it's still a challenge. And, we have the goals. I mean, one of the goals of moving here, initially we got a 30-year mortgage, and it was at 4.1%. And I said, okay, you know what? If I'm doing well at the freelancing, and I don't want to wait 30 years because I was already in my early 40s, and I don't want to be 70 years old when the mortgage is paid off.
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, if I'm making extra money and we're knocking off different bills one by one, what would I need to take if I said, you know what, if I could pay it off in 10 years instead of 30 years, how much extra would I have to pay every month? And so that's been the goal, is saying, okay, make not only enough to like pay our bills, like the utilities and car payments and whatever, but on top of that, set aside an extra amount of money. That way we can pay off the house that much quicker.
Yeah.
So for the last 2.5 years, basically we've been putting a chunk away every month into an investment account to build up a balance where it's a mortgage payoff fund. And then also obviously paying the mortgage down every month. And then almost 6 months ago, we refinanced it into a 15-year at 2.6%.
Oh, great.
So that payment obviously went up a little bit because you're paying more principal over a shorter period of time. But between doing that mortgage, reducing the interest, and then me paying the extra
You
mortgage
save
payoff fund,
tons of money. Yeah.
yeah, we'll save a lot of money on interest, but also we'll probably have it paid off in another 6 or 7 years,
Mhm.
maybe less. This, I guess, it all depends on how the market does and everything else. But some people, really are focused on, okay, that amount of money should have been put into the mortgage and just pay off the mortgage quicker. But personally, I like the flexibility of not doing that because one, there's obviously a potential higher returns in the stock market, especially versus like a 2.6% mortgage, right? But
Mhm.
also because I'm a freelancer and because my income is erratic and because of coronavirus, where my income dropped from where I was the 4 months leading up to the coronavirus, it basically dropped 50%.
Mhm.
And so overnight, a lot of the money that we were doing and we were doing really well with it, obviously, all of a sudden, all that went away.
Yeah, and if you pay I guess if you pay the house, I mean, if you pay your mortgage faster, it's illiquid in a way because you can put in
Yeah,
the stock market, and at least it's semi-liquid. At least you can sell your assets.
yeah, absolutely. Even though the stock market obviously dropped as well
Yes.
in March,
Mm.
and it still hasn't recovered to its highs. And obviously, even today, the last couple of days, it's actually been going down. And so, yeah, you may lose a little bit of money,
Mm.
but like you said, once you pay extra principal on your mortgage, the only way to get that money back out is either to refinance your mortgage, which is costly, and you have to get approved for it. And so, if your income is down, it's harder to get approved for it,
Mm.
or you have to be able to get a home equity line of credit. And again, you have to get approved for that. And so I just don't like locking money up and locking money away. I'd rather have options. And so putting it into the investment fund to me gives options. And so what may happen is, when it comes time and we go, you know what, we now have enough, we can just literally cash out and write a check to pay off the mortgage. I don't know that we will. I think
Mm.
one, it's like, it's forced savings. We're kind of going down that path, and we've already kind of penciled that into our mind, right? That mortgage payment and that extra amount. So even if we don't need to do it, it's a way to kind of keep building that financial future. But beyond that, maybe it's just one of those things where you go, you know what? Instead of writing the check, let's just stop writing a check ourselves. And what we'll do is every month we'll just withdraw the mortgage payment from the investment account, let the rest of it continue to ride
Mm.
based on the market performance. And then we don't have to write the check anymore. All we got to do is just pull it out of the investment account and pay the mortgage with that. And now we have extra cash that we can use to maybe pay the kids' tuition or send them to a nicer school or help them get started up with their life by buying them a home or saving up for like their wedding and those type of things.
Yeah, but that's great. That's great. And Lee, one question I have is that okay, you managed to move from LA to Nashville.
Mhm.
You found a better work-life balance for yourself, but you had quite a good income. This is not the case for many people listening, probably. And okay, in Europe, it's okay. It's the incomes are usually less. The situations are different. But how can, for example, people in the US with a lower salary can they achieve the same kind of lifestyle change as you did? Is that possible? Or are there ways to do that? Or what should they focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, like I said, I had a head start because of the
Yeah.
income, but like I said, we also had a lot of bills too, and
Mm.
so it wasn't all just play money. But I think that people that have a lower salary, and there are ways for them to do that. One, very simple one is take a look at where you're spending your money and see if there are cheaper alternatives. Right? If
Mhm.
you have cable, you switch over to like Hulu instead, and like in the U.S., cable TV is probably $80 to $150 a month,
Mhm.
right? And maybe switch to Netflix, which is $10 or 15, and Hulu, which is another like $5 or $6. And so now you're only spending 20 instead of spending, 80 to $150. And so that little bit of money every month adds up quickly over the course of a year,
Mhm.
those type of things. Shopping your insurance on your car, shopping your insurance on your home. you're looking to refinance your mortgage, all those different types of things. Those are like the low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of effort. It doesn't take a lot of work. But once you do it, now it's automatic. And like once you refinance your home or once you lower your bill on your cell phone or your utilities or whatever, that's locked in. You don't have to worry about it. Like you did the work this month. Next month, you're still going to reap those rewards, and the next month, and the next month, and the next month. And so I'm a big fan of doing a little bit of work and getting a lot of return.
Yeah.
And so those are great ways to do it right away, right? But you can't cut your way to prosperity. That's one of the big things that I think both you and I agree on, and a lot of our friends in the FinCon world talk about, is that you can only cut your expenses so much, right? Like we're not going to go live on the corner in a cardboard box, right?
I'm not going to make my own toothpaste.
Yeah. Oh God. We do have friends that in this world that they make their own toothpaste, and they pull the light bulb out of the fridge and out of the oven and those types of things. Like seriously, like you just save 5 cents over the course of a year. Let's focus on the bigger. Focus on the bigger tasks at hand. So one of the things I would recommend people do is look at where you're spending your money and figure out what are the top 10 things that you spend your money on. It's like your housing, your car, your food, all those different things like that, and say, okay, of those top 10 things, how can I shave some money off of those? Because if you're, in the personal finance world, they talk about like the latte factor. Oh, just cut out coffee and that's $5 a day and everything like that. It's like, okay, you can't deny yourself every little small pleasure. If that's not I don't think that's the world that anybody really wants to sign up for.
No, otherwise you overthink every single purchase.
Oh yeah. I mean, and your time is worth something. And, you go, okay, well, I'm going to drive 15 miles down the road to go save 10 cents on the gallon of gas. Okay, well, what was your time worth? And could you have maybe done something better with that time? And then how much gas did you actually burn driving down those 15 miles back and forth to be able to save a little bit of money? And so that's why I'm a big fan of focusing on like what your top 10 expenses are, taking a look at those and figuring out, okay, what can I do to reduce those expenses? And then the next thing I would do is say, okay, of the things I'm doing today, how can I generate better returns off of those? And so, especially right now during coronavirus, very few of us are actually going to the store and shopping, right? Most of us are doing online shopping and those types of things. So the way to kind of generate some extra cash off of those activities is, number one, getting a credit card that provides cash back. And so I'm not familiar with all the different types of credit cards and those types of things in Europe, but in America, there are a lot of different types of credit cards that offer cash back on your purchases. And some of them, instead of just being a broad cashback card, maybe they offer bonus cashback in certain categories like maybe groceries or gas or travel or food, those types of things. And so, again, you've already done the math a little bit on where you spend the most money. Maybe you find a credit card that gives you cash back on those categories where you spend the most. And so you're going to do that. And so now you're going to pay every month with that credit card. But the number one thing you want to do is also pay it off in full every month, because you don't want to earn a little bit of cash back. And then next thing you know, the bank is charging you more interest than what you earned on the cash back. And now you're even in a worse financial position. So you're going to do that. But now, like I said, if you're doing a lot of online shopping, instead of going directly to that store, like in the US, like Target and Kohl's and Home Depot and Lowe's, and a lot of those types of stores are very popular here. Instead of going directly to their website, go to a website that offers cash back through a portal. These shopping portals, what they do, essentially, it's like the world that you and I are in, and Jonathan, it's an affiliate world, right? So if we drive traffic to that retailer, they will share a portion of the transaction with us, right? It's like it's that affiliate, that profit sharing model. And so essentially, what these shopping portals do, instead of them taking all the money from that referral, essentially they share a portion of it back with you. Yeah. And so if you love to travel, and again, not a lot of people are traveling right now due to the coronavirus, but hopefully next year or the year after, we'll be traveling a lot more. And so what you can do is, there's airline shopping portals. There are bank points shopping portals like Chase and Capital One and those type of things. And then there's also cashback portals. And so if you're looking to try to get ahead and pay off your debt and get to that financial freedom, going through the cashback portals is probably a good thing. And so one of my favorites is Cashback Monitor. And so what they're kind of like an Expedia, where they look at all the different cashback sites or all the different shopping portals out there. And when you type in one of your favorites, what it'll do is say, okay, here are the different portals and how much they offer, whether it's airline miles, points, or cash back. And then that way you can pick which one is most attractive to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do just those two things, again, once you apply for the credit card, all you got to do is remember to use it and pay it off in full, right? And so again, that's an easy win. And especially if you apply for a credit card, a lot of times in the US anyways, you'll get a sign up bonus if you spend a little bit of money on it. And so that'll give you an extra few $100s to help you accelerate the payoff of some of your debt or build up that financial cushion in case of an emergency, like some of us have had that reduced income during coronavirus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the only real active part now is every time you go shopping, instead of going to that website directly, take 15 seconds, go to Cashback Monitor, type in that retailer's name and see which shopping portals are available, click the link, and boom, now it sends you over back to that website of that retailer you want to purchase from. And now you're earning cash back on your transaction.
Yeah, it's great because these are things that you were going to buy anyway. So then you might as well save some money on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those are like two really good ways to do things as far as being able to reduce your expenses and then obviously earn a little bit of money on some of the things you're going to be doing anyways.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is hopefully you have some time in your schedule and you're going to do some things where maybe you're either learning a new skill. There are most people think when they learn a new skill, I got to go to school. It's going to cost so much money. It's going to take so long. In today's internet, it doesn't take that long to be able to learn a new skill. There's a lot of free resources. Khan Academy has either free or cheap resources. Let's see, Skillshare is another one. MIT, they have an online school.
Udemy.
Yeah, Udemy. So there's a lot of places out there where you can learn some new skills. Obviously, it's not the same thing as getting a degree from Harvard or some other prestigious school, right? Mm-hmm. But if you learn the skill and you can show an employer, either your current employer or a prospective new one, that you have these skills that are in demand, maybe it's a way to be able to earn a little bit of extra money and get a boost in your salary or boost in your bonus, or maybe if it's a lateral move, but it's a company that instead of maybe you're working right now for a small shop and there's no opportunity to move up within the company, but if you can take the skills that you learn and get a job at a larger company where there is more opportunity to move up, maybe you're not going to make that bump in salary right away, but with the opportunities that you have at that larger company, you will over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's that, but also you can also try to learn some skills where you can maybe start a side hustle, right? Like whether it's you're doing some consulting, you're doing some graphic design, selling things on Etsy, whatever it is. Take some of your time that you have, obviously not all of it, because you still want to be able to spend time with your family and watch TV or whatever you want to do. But take a small portion of your time and say, you know what, of these 4 hours or 10 hours or whatever a week that you can spend, I'm going to be focused. I'm going to try to do something where I'm going to be able to earn a little bit of extra money, whether it's, again, selling on Etsy, creating some crafts that you can sell on Etsy, doing some design work. There are websites all over the place where you can say, you know what, I'm looking to do these services like on Fiverr or let's see, like there's Clear Voice for freelance writing. There's Upwork. There's a lot of different sites like that. But if you just look up for like side hustles or whatever your profession is or whatever your skill is, and look at jobs or freelance, you'll find a lot of sites out there that have basically a portal where people are looking to do work and where people are looking to pay somebody to do that work. And again, maybe you're only going to earn $100 or $50 or something that's relatively small. It's getting that experience, getting that practice. And the more that you hone that skill, the more you have the ability to ask for the next client for a little bit more money. Because once you have a kind of a portfolio, you have some testimonials, those types of things from people that you've already done the work for. Now you're able to potentially get a little bit more money with the next client because they go, wow, this person is not like an unknown commodity. I don't know whether or not they can perform the job that's necessary. But if you have a lot of 5-star reviews from your previous clients, they go, wow, this person must really rock at their job. that's the person I want because they're reasonably affordable. They obviously do high quality work because they're getting great ratings, and you basically just looking at their portfolio, they look like that's the type of work that I really want.
Mm, yeah. And then Lee, so if I summarize, basically you track your expenses, you save cost on the 10 most expensive categories of your cost. Then you try to do you negotiate, and then you try to find a side hustle. You try to make more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and talking about those side hustles, I mean, your side, this freelancing of yours, that was a passion that you developed through the years, even when you were working at the bank, or is that something that came after when you decided to move to Nashville?
Sure. Yeah. No. So for me, it was one of those things where it kind of combined two things. It was one, I love to travel, and that's you and I had kind of hit it off talking about traveling and everything, and so I love to travel. My wife and I traveled, all the time. Even when we had kids, we still traveled quite a bit, and I used a lot of airline miles and hotel points to pay for our travels instead of cash. And so a lot of our friends, because they knew that I made good money at the bank, they just wrongly assumed that because I made good money, I was able to afford all the travels we were doing. And I would always reply to them. I said, well, look, obviously you know how frugal I am. Why would you think I'd be spending so much money on all these different trips? And so I said, I'm going to start a website and I'm going to show people, how I do things,
Yeah.
and basically walk them through the process. So that way, if they want to do it, they can kind of follow the steps that I've created.
Mhm.
And so I started writing my blog in December 2012, and naively, I was like, oh, I'm going to create this website. I'm going to write a few posts, and there's going to be some money coming in, right? And that's not the case. I think a lot of people, when they write their blogs, either one, they just start out and they really don't gain any traction. They don't know how to monetize it, those type of things. And it's just, you're just writing, you're like talking into the wind. You're doing action, but you're not really getting anything in return.
Mhm.
Even today, like my website, makes a little bit of money, but it's not enough for the average person to live on. And so, although it didn't do that for me as far as generating a lot of cash, what it did do is it gave me a portfolio. When I talk to freelance clients, I can point to them and say, look, these are the type of articles that I can write. This is the quality of writing that I can do. And so again, it gives them that confidence that, wow, this person knows how to properly structure sentences
Mhm.
and paragraphs and a cohesive point and everything else. And so there's that. But it gave me that practice of writing. And so I practice and practice and practice. And like anything, like, you and I with our podcasts and our websites, the stuff we did years ago, we'd almost be ashamed if you compare it to versus where we are today, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's like anything in life. You start out and you're not going to be very good at it.
You throw spaghetti at the wall basically and see what
Yeah,
sticks. Yeah.
absolutely. And then you talk to your friends, you pick up a little bit here and there, and you get better over time. And so I was doing the podcast. I mean, I was doing my website, and then I learned about a thing called FinCon, and which is a personal finance conference where it's not so much for people who want to learn about money, but it's a conference for people who talk about money, whether it's on their podcasts, social media, websites, those types of things. We all get together and talk about how we can teach people better, how we can do better with our content, so that way people learn more and we can really impact and improve their lives, right?
Yeah.
And so I started learning about FinCon, started going, but at the time I was working, my bank job, and so really it was more of me going there, and I learned a little bit because I'm like, okay, well, this is my hobby. You do my website. It's kind of fun to do, and I might as well learn something while I'm here. But really, the majority of the benefit was about meeting new people, learning from them, and just kind of creating those friendships that at some point in the future, they might be able to provide something that you need, right? And you might be able to provide something that they need. I mean, that's really what the friendship's all about. And so I was going for several years. And then again, it came time where it was made clear to me that it was time to leave my job. What I did is I said, okay, well, I've been writing my blog for all these years. I wonder if I can make a living doing it for some of these other sites, because I know that some of my friends make really good money. A few of them I mean, they make close to 300,000 or if not more per year writing articles for other websites. And that's just crazy money, and I obviously, like we talked about it, my expenses are a lot lower here, and I want to be able to balance being able to spend time with my family versus you writing a bunch of articles. But I'm like, okay, if I can be half as successful as them or, a third of as successful as them, that would be really something,
Yeah,
and so
still very high.
yeah, and still, yeah, lots of money, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, let me just kind of talk to them and ask them how they do it, how they find clients, and how they just kind of how it all works, right? Like, how do you build them, and how do you find them, and how do you work with them, and on all those different things. And so I reached out to probably a handful of friends, like 4 or 5, and just kind of spent half an hour or so talking with them and saying, okay, well, how do you do this, and how do you do that, and having those conversations with people that I trusted and people that I knew that were successful, and not just somebody that's trying to sell you a webinar off the internet or
Yeah.
trying to sell you their ebook or whatever. Hey, look at me! I work 3 hours a week and I make $50,000 a month. It's like, well, really, are you making it from your website or making it from selling books to people like me? you know, and so by talking to people that I really trust and admire, I learned what they did, and I said, okay, well, without being offensive to them, I was like, okay, well, they don't have the same personal finance background that I do, like from investments and banking and stuff like that. If I can, again, be a half as successful or a third or whatever, just a fraction of their success with the knowledge that I have, I think I could do this,
Yeah.
And so that gave me the confidence to at least try to pursue that as a career, right? And again, one of the people that I reached out to, they said, well, hey, I have this client. I don't have the capacity to take it. And it's probably a little bit lower rate than what I would take from a client. But for you starting out, I think this would be a good assignment for you. And that assignment it was an insurance company, and they were doing like 1,000-word articles for about $100. And so, again, because I was new to it all, I'm like, I don't know if this is a good rate or not. And so, if you do freelance writing or that's something that you're interested in, they kind of focus on a per word, like a cents per word, and that article for $100 for 1,000 words, that's 10 cents a word, and it's not the greatest rate. I mean, I have clients that pay far better than that today, but it's something that was decent. It was something that kind of got my feet wet. And when I reached out to even further clients down the road, because I was able to have things published by somebody else versus just my own, it gave me a little bit more credibility. And they said, okay, well, it's kind of like when you're when you're dating, before you get married or even after you get married, right? You're much more attractive once somebody else kind of validates you, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're single and you're lonely, right? It seems like you're never going to find somebody, but once you find a girlfriend, all of a sudden, like everybody's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a long time." Like, oh, sorry, I got somebody now. And so it's kind of the same thing with this. It's that once somebody else has published your work, that's the validation that they need. And because what happens if before, when you go, oh, hey, I'm looking to start freelance writing, like, oh, okay, can you send me your portfolio? I'm like, well, I haven't written for anybody else yet. I have some stuff on my own site, which is better than nothing, but it's still not somebody else validating, saying, okay,
sure.
you did good enough work where we're going to pay you. And so it just kind of steamrolled, right? Like you just sorry, not steamrolled, it snowballed, right? So I started off with this one client. I started doing a few articles for them, $100 a pop, and then found another client paying a little bit better, paying a little better, paying a little bit better. And now that I've been doing it for about 2.5 years, it's one of those things that whenever I come across a new opportunity, I look at it and say, okay, do I have enough capacity to take it on and add it to what I'm already doing? Or when I look at the existing kind of portfolio of clients that I'm working with, is this a new client that I'm willing to kind of eliminate or reduce one of the clients I'm already working with to fit this one into the portfolio?
So it's a reverse now. It's the
Yeah,
opposite.
yeah.
Yeah.
And in some ways, like there's a lot of fear and hesitancy about going out onto your own like this, right? Because you're like, well, I'm used to having a stable paycheck from my job, and in some ways, we talk about like with real estate, right? Or even with stocks, it's a concentration risk. You have 100% of your income coming from one source. If that one source gets upset at you and they want to get rid of you, you've now lost 100% of your income.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have, say, like 15 different clients, and maybe you're only doing like anywhere from like 1 or 2 or 4 articles a month for each one of those clients, and you lose one because maybe they've run out of budget, they have a new editor, and that editor doesn't like your style or wants to bring in their own people or whatever, okay, you lost a fraction of your income. You still have more than 90% of your income from all these other sources.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that ironic situation where leaving a W-2 job actually provides more safety and security, even though you're not getting that stable W-2 paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever. To me, it's been great in that sense that I have that diversity of income from all those different clients. And as you and I know just from our private conversations, I also have some real estate properties. Personally, I don't take any cash off of them. I just use that money to reinvest and pay down the mortgages faster. But so at some point towards retirement age, then all those will be paid off. But in the meantime, I focus more on the freelance income to be able to pay my bills on a daily basis.
Okay. And next to your ventures, your freelancing, you have the podcast as well. We travel there. So how is that going for now? I mean, not financially, but how is it going? Because, okay, with the coronavirus, are people still listening or getting inspired? I mean, I like the show, but how is it going?
Yeah, sure. First, for your listeners, a brief intro on it. So what I do is I interview people from all over the world to find out the best thing to do in their city. And so what I do is just try to find the average person living in that city and say, hey, where should we go? What should we eat? Where should we stay? Those type of questions. And essentially the listener is like a voyeur listening in on that conversation. And so with it, it was one of those things where I launched it in September of 2018, and it's been growing pretty steadily every month. I've released a little over 120 episodes. Definitely in March, I noticed a big drop, right, in the number of people that were downloading it. I think there's just a lot of people that were concerned and scared, not really knowing what to do. And so travel was definitely like not the number one thing on their mind at that point.
Yeah.
But I think by June, things had kind of tapered off a little bit, especially here in the U.S. That we had a lot more of a quarantine. I think they did in certain countries in Europe as well, where people were kind of locked down. People were staying at home, and I think people got a little bit of a cabin fever, where they were just ready to travel, and so people traveled a lot during the summertime, and at June. So it kind of goes in waves, right? Where I get a whole bunch of clients or guests all lined up and record, and then I have like a long list of recordings all done, and then I go, I only have like 2 more episodes to go, and so I got to reach out to more guests and try to find more guests to be on the podcast. And so I was talking to my wife about this in June, saying, "Oh yeah, I'm close to running out of episodes. I gotta reach out to people." And she said, "Why are you doing that? Nobody's interested in travel right now. Like, why are you wasting your time? And why? Like, it's almost offensive that you would even ask people talking about a podcast about travel when everybody's worried about living and not getting sick right now." And so I understand that, but I try to take a positive stance in things. And so there's obviously hope that the coronavirus will be gone sometime soon, whether it's a vaccine, whatever it is. Like, we hope that it's going to be end or diminish sometime soon, so we can get a little bit back to that normalcy. And so I said, look, people are already trying to book travel for next year, right, in 2021 and going into 2022. So I want to be able to inspire people to do that. But on top of that, it's really one of those things that people are sick of being stuck in their walls, whether it's their apartment, their home, or whatever. And they need to be able to kind of have that voyeuristic living through somebody else's words type of experience. And I think that's what the podcast really does, is that it allows people to kind of sit back and close their eyes and kind of imagine what it would be like to visit that city. The different things to do, where to stay, how to get around, all those types of things. And even in normal times, say coronavirus never happened, in the US, we have a lot less vacation time than the people in Europe, like you, right? And so the average person here in the US maybe has like 2 to 3 weeks vacation. And even of that, there's studies that come out pretty much every year of like all this unused vacation days. So people, even though we have less vacation, we still don't use it all.
Oh, come on. It's
right?
only 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's only 2 weeks and they still don't use it.
Mm.
Partly, I think people are just kind of afraid after like 9/11 and the financial crisis that your companies really kind of clamped down, and it's almost like you're afraid to take the time off because if you leave and the company operates just fine without you, maybe they don't need you, right? And so there's a little bit of that fear, and so or they're running so lean as a company, you like the company would fall apart if you're gone, and so we can't afford for you to go on vacation. You need to stay here because otherwise there's nobody to do the work that you would do while you're here. I think in normal times, is people, whether they're sitting in a cubicle, their office, or on their commute, need an escape. And I think the podcast does that for them as well. And so that's really the kind of the hopes and the dreams of it. And so I noticed starting in June that the downloads started really picking up. And then the last couple months, they've actually done even better than ever. And last month in September was my highest ever. A little bit over, I think, 4,400 downloads. And I just looked earlier this morning. We still have 3 days left of the month, and I've already exceeded that just by a hair. And so it's refreshing to see that the downloads are going up and the podcast is really starting to pick up steam. It's still not like hugely or wildly popular, but it's good to see that the numbers are going up. And I'm in it for the long term. And it's good to see that progress. And like putting together a podcast is a lot of work. It's the pre-planning, it's the recording, the show notes, everything that comes along with the podcast. It's a lot of work, and virtually nothing in return. It's all money out versus money in. You do it either because you love it or because you hope over the long term, several years or whatever, it'll get to the point where it will actually start generating money where it covers all the expenses and hopefully a little bit of something extra for your pocket as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like your show. Why? Because it covers places from all over the world. I listened to one episode, so there's one download of me today. It's the Belgian lady that lives in Leuven, and there's episodes in Hong Kong, in Japan, I think. So it's really everywhere. So it's fantastic. So that's and in half an hour, it's a fun episode, and you get insider tips, and you get what I'm mostly looking forward to is the food part. So I know that if I will travel again soon after this virus is over, I will see if the city is talked about in your show, and I will listen to that episode. It's fun.
Well, thank you so much for that. Yeah, and I thank you for the download and for saying that. I will say this: if people listening to your podcast, if somebody wants to talk about their city and represent their city, they can go to wetravelthere.com/guest and submit their information. And I'd love to have them on. Like you said, it's cities from all over the world, not just US focused. So it's all over the world. And it's not just big cities either. So it's, like you mentioned Japan, for example. Obviously, Tokyo is a big city in Japan. And that's something that probably is one of the first places people think of when they're planning a visit to Japan. But I also have an episode for Kamakura, Japan, which is about an hour south there, and it's right on the coastline. Mm-hmm. So it's a really fun city, a lot of things to offer. And even if you don't go to that city and plan to spend an entire vacation there, maybe it's something when you go to Tokyo, you say, you know what? I listened to that episode and it seems really cool. I'm gonna take like 1 or 2 days to make a little detour to go visit that little city, enjoy what they have to offer, and then go back and spend the rest of the time in Tokyo.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, maybe something you would not think about it otherwise. And myself, I was on the show. I talked about Oslo. So my very first podcast episode. So yeah, I'm there too. So we talk about cities in Europe, cities in South America, Japan, Asia, everything. So yeah, it's great, and I recommend it to everybody. I'll link it. I'll link the guest link in the show notes, Lee. And Lee, I think we come at the end of the show, and I want to thank you so much for being open and sharing your story on the podcast. I think it's quite inspirational, and I'll thank you for the actionable tips. So that's great. I think that can help many people, many listeners to get started, to get their finances better together, so they can maybe make the moves they want for their life. So I think it's really important. I think there was key elements to start. And Lee, as you know, before we head off, we always have our three quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Fantastic. So we talked a bit about investments like your rental units, the stock markets, and so on. But what has been your best investment so far, Lee?
For me, it was actually going to FinCon. So it was one of those things. It was a conference that I not necessarily had like any real reason to go because again, I had a day job and everything else. But I went just kind of on a lark, right? I went there just to see what it was like, and that investment really kind of changed the direction in my life. And obviously, not a lot of people here that are listening are necessarily going to be doing personal finance or writing or whatever type of content. But I would say if you're looking to do something in your life, take a little bit of money and find a conference that is related to something that you're interested in, or that's something that's related to your career, and see if you can meet some people that maybe have other job prospects for you, or that you can go there and you can learn some additional skills that you can do better in your current job. Those type of things are incredibly valuable, and that is going to be one of the best investments you'll ever make is creating opportunities for you to learn and to network with people that'll help advance your career.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely great. And FinCon, I've been there last year. Okay, the people there are particularly nice, so it doesn't even feel like business. So that's the fun thing. But it can mean business. So that's the whole thing. So it's great. So I don't know if there's many conferences like this, but yeah, I had a great experience there. And yeah, I think anyway, in any type of field that you are, connecting with like-minded people is what will help you grow. I mean, I play music as a hobby. It's by getting inspired from my friends and some other people that you want to play better or more, and yeah, that you find opportunities, for example. So, Lee, question number 2: what is the best book you can recommend to anyone? And it doesn't need to be a financial book.
Absolutely. So one of the books that I don't know if it necessarily changed my life or anything like that in such a grand way, at least not something that wasn't overt there, but something called the Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably mispronounced his name. He has a Brazilian last name, but the book is really fantastic, and it kind of helps like open your eyes to like your normal daily living. And I don't know. I read it a long time ago, so I'm a little rusty on the exact everything that happened in the book. But I know that basically the gentleman was on a path on a journey, and he met a lot of people along the way that changed the course of his journey and changed the course of his life. And sometimes you have to be open to allowing that to happen. If you have your blinders on and you aren't willing to change your opinions on things, it's going to be a rougher life for you. If you're able to open your mind and your eyes and your heart to the people that you pass along the way, it can have a profound effect on you and change your life in just the most positive way.
Mm-hmm. I read it actually just before the summer, so I remember it a bit maybe more vividly, Ali. One thing, okay, I didn't like every part of the book, but that's my opinion. What I liked, however, is that as well to add to, I like this component of being open. And I remember that the guy was pretty resourceful. So many things happen. I think if you remember, he gets his sword stolen in the market, or his money.
Mm-hmm.
And he became very resourceful because he was focused on his goal. So he didn't let his guard down. He was really focused. So it's something that I appreciate from the book. It's okay, this resourcefulness and this okay, despite the circumstances, try to see what he can do to still try to achieve his goal, which in the end he managed.
Yeah, absolutely. I just looked in the binding of the book, and I read it in November of 2006, so 14 years ago. So, so you can understand I'm a little rusty on it, but it definitely had a profound effect on me, and I remember it to this day.
Okay, very good. And then the last question, Lee: what is the best purchase you've made for under $100?
So this one's actually right at that limit, $100. It's something called Global Entry, and so here as an American, when we travel, they call it a trusted traveler program. And so what it does is it saves you time when you travel. Every time you go to the airport, instead of sitting in the long line with everybody else and having to take off your shoes and your belt and take your laptop out of your bag and all your liquids out, everything else, like, oh, it's such a pain. Although, because I haven't flown much recently, I would welcome that at this point. But normally, in normal times, it slows down the entire process. The lines are long. Everybody's kind of grumpy. Yeah. It's a total hassle. Yeah. But you pay $100 and it's good for 5 years. Oh, and really? Global Entry allows you to basically to get into a dedicated line where you don't have to take off your shoes. You can keep your belt on. You can keep your liquids in your bag and your laptop and stuff like that. So you breeze through the security process because they've already kind of pre-screened you and did a background check on you to see, like, okay, is this person likely to do like terrorism, or is this person just somebody who wants to travel and fly from Nashville to LA? Right. Yeah. And so it speeds that process along. And even more so when I'm traveling internationally, because I love visiting all these other countries and a lot of the places I've been able to interview. When I come back from those travels, coming into the United States, it actually speeds the custom process along as well. So I recently took a flight with my son to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. And we got off the plane, walked to customs. We literally pushed the button, did a facial recognition, and we got through customs in 15 seconds. Whereas everybody else that was on the plane was stuck there probably for another 20 or 30 minutes as they went through that entire process and waited in the line and everything else. So to me, my time is valuable. I value my time to the point where I'm willing to pay for these types of services. And it's a huge thing. It reduces the stress. It makes the whole travel experience so much better. And because I have credit cards that give me lounge access, when I am flying, I get into the lounge that much quicker. So that way I can go enjoy myself before I get onto the flight.
Yeah, very good. And for $20 a year, come on, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. I guarantee you that a lot of people, when they're standing in that line all frustrated and trying to catch their flight, maybe they're going to miss the flight because the line is so long, they would gladly pay $20 on the spot to be able to skip the line.
Exactly. Okay. Well, great tip. I'll link it. It's too bad that we don't have this here. But yeah, I'd love that too. So Lee, thank you again so much. And we talked a bit about your website, but how can people find you?
Yeah, the best way is everything at Bald Thoughts. So my baldthoughts.com on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those different channels. That's where you can find me. That's where I talk about all the things, miles and points and travel experiences and things like that. And then at We Travel There, wetravelthere.com. And then We Travel There on all the different social media channels as well, if you want to learn about the podcast. And again, hopefully somebody that's listening here would be interested in representing their city. And hopefully one day you'll be listening to their episode too, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. And tell Lee you came from this podcast to his podcast. I'd love to hear that. Yeah, that's how we connect.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Lee, thanks again so much. And I'll speak to you soon.
It was great talking to you, buddy.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you learned something from it. And who knows, maybe you are the next guest on the We Travel There podcast. So yeah, make sure you sign up for it. I've linked it in the show notes, so you can just sign up there and then connect with Lee. And now, before we head off, here are the key takeaways for today. Number 1, no matter how successful your career may be, things can still change. And if you feel likely there's a change in the air, well, ask yourself, should I change jobs to something similar, or should I do something else? Number 2, define your priorities and run the numbers. For Lee, it was to spend more time with kids, see them grow. And after running the numbers, well, they came to the conclusion that they needed to move to a cheaper area. And of course, this will depend on your situation. Your situation will be different, but it's all about, again, defining your priorities, running the numbers, and see if it makes sense for you. Number 3, if you go the freelance route, well, pay attention to your cash flow as your income will become more fluctuating. If you have extra money at the end of the month, for example, well, you can pay for your home faster. You can accelerate the payment, but the money you put in there is illiquid. While if you put that extra money in the stock markets, you get more flexibility. So just pay attention to that. Number 4, the tips for us with regular incomes. So number one, look at cheaper alternatives for what you use. Focus on the big wins and the low-hanging fruits. For example, negotiating your insurance, your car insurance, your mortgage, etc. And focus as well on your top 10 expenses and see where you can cut costs and save money. Number two, if you can in your country, use cashback cards and pay these in full every month, of course. Otherwise, you're putting yourself in a worse situation than before. And number three, learn skills online that are in demand or side hustle. And this can be a couple of hours a week. It can be an Etsy shop, some design work, some freelance work like Lee, why not? And see if you can make some extra money there. And last key takeaway for today, use the power of networking at conferences. You never know what might come out of it. In the end, Lee started his website as a hobby back in 2011, and now he's working full-time on his passions. So that was it for today. Thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. Make sure you subscribe in Apple Podcast. And of course, please do not hesitate to contact me. If you have any questions or feedback, send me an email, john@joneytalks.com, or connect through social media at Joney Talks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And amigos, once more, thanks so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.